What do you think when you hear about the move afoot to regulate big technology? Makes sense to you?
It does in this sense. I was there when we did the first regulation. People forget this, but in the late mid-'90s, the Republicans were in control. I was a ranking Democrat. That's when we adopted the rules for the Internet at the time and specifically absolved them from liability for things that they carried and instead said, if someone claims that they have carried something that infringes on their property rights, they have to take it down. I say that because our frame at that point was intellectual property. The regulation we did do in the 90s, I don't remember privacy being an issue, or certainly not obscenity. The issue was protecting intellectual property rights, which I think we did well.
96? Was there,
yeah, and what the bill said was, if you are a holder of intellectual property and you see it being violated and you notify the carrier, they have to take it down. And they only become liable if they haven't taken it down because they could not have possibly checked all the intellectual property. And that was a regime that's worked well. What we have now is a whole new set of concerns. So that's why I think, yes, it makes sense to look at the regulation, because I know that the existing regulation wasn't dealing with this set of issues. I do think the privacy concern is a real one for people, particularly with regard to children, and especially since efforts to kind of shield the children are frustrated by the fact that the children here are the adults in terms of understanding what's going on. And the other is antitrust. I think there is a legitimate argument there for restricting the big ones from snapping up startups, which they explicitly do to prevent future competition.
I'm with you on privacy, but the consensus that we often hear around the table is that privacy doesn't matter, consumers don't care.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you see a lot of politicians being concerned about privacy?
Yeah.
Okay, what do you think?
It's because they
you think they woke up one morning and said, by the way, I think I worry about privacy? They're reflecting their constituents. This is one where I don't think there are pre-existing ideological drives for either the left or the right or Democrats or Republicans. Frankly, I think some of the privacy stuff is overdone. People just be more careful what you put on there. If you're getting ads you don't want to read, don't look at them. But I do think the privacy concern is driven by the constituents.
Do you think, though, the answer is, I mean, it's interesting because oftentimes the answer to all this is supposedly break the companies up, that somehow that relates to the privacy
I don't think that's the answer to privacy. No, I think you need to have other rules. I haven't looked at it as much, I mean, but no, I think the argument for, and I wouldn't say you'd break them up, I do favor at this point restricting them from buying up new companies.
Future companies.
Yeah, because
Let's
I think
go back in time on that one. Forget about privacy a second, because I'm really intrigued on your idea of antitrust and breaking things up.
I don't want to break things up.
Okay.
I just said that.
Okay, but go back to the 80s. IBM was the largest market cap, I think, in the S&P. It was the behemoth. It was buying everything. It was buying anything that moved. Look at it today. It's a shadow of itself. Technology and the market takes care of these behemoths. They get lost.
Not all of them, and
well,
that's also kind of a mindless approach to think that analogies can be overdone. There are great differences between what we're talking about today. On the other side, I would say I don't see any harm.
I like the market solving it. I don't think we have to regulate it or break it up. I may agree with you on that.
I don't want to break it up, but I do think that the market works better when there are more participants in the market. Now, I understand the argument you make, but it's an argument against all antitrust. It's not an argument for tech. It's an argument if the market does everything, then the problem started with John Sherman in 1890 with the Sherman Antitrust Act, and then it was urged on by those radicals, William Howard Taft and Theodore Roosevelt.
But that's
the fundamental basis of antitrust is you can't let that question of the size and of the degree of competition be left entirely to the market.
Now, are you talking about the domestic market? But when you go online to an Amazon, it has to compete with Alibaba. That's a global player.
True.
So it's a different environment.
No, it's not that different. IBM competed.
They were the only mainframe maker.
No, I'm talking about today. Yes, the world is global. So almost any question of competition becomes the whole world. But so you're saying now, given globalization, we don't need antitrust law anymore?
No, I'm saying...
please answer that. Do you think we need it or not?
I like to look at actual markets. I look at Europe. I see no innovation. I see stifling because of regulation in almost every sector. There are no Amazons there because Regulators regulate all the
Okay, and that has, of course, nothing to do with the question I asked you, which was specifically about antitrust. And you obviously don't want to answer it, so you get into these other things. We're not talking about all regulation.
If we penalize success in America, we take away what made the country great in the first place. That's my whole point. Yes, you have to deal with that.
Have you got background music?
No, I'm a capitalist who invests in companies.
The point is this, but let me go back to the question, which you obviously don't want to answer. Do you think because of globalization and international competition, we don't need antitrust very much anymore in America? I'm not talking about other regulation. I think, for instance, this notion that you don't have hate speech. I'm all for allowing people to engage in hate speech. The whole purpose of free speech is to let obnoxious people say obnoxious things.
Do you want people to be involved in hate speech?
Oh, I don't care whether they are or not. In the sense of legally, I think this law in Germany that you can't deny the Holocaust is wrong.
Okay, but do you think it's wrong if Facebook or Twitter or somebody like that were to make on a commercial decision? This is actually a free market situation.
It's the government. Free speech has to do with the government. I don't believe what private individuals do. If you want to have people on here, if you want to have a guest on here.
But when you hear people say these platforms have remarkable control, you hear this, by the way, more on the other side of the aisle, on your side, who, they say that somehow Facebook and Twitter and others and the president has said it. The president has publicly come out and said that Twitter has effectively made it harder for conservatives to reach their audience. Do you believe that? And B, do you think they should be allowed to do that? That's part of this whole argument.
Oh, I believe that the owner of the platform has the right to do that. If you want to have guests on here who say whatever they want to say, that's your business. And I believe in free speech. And no, I don't think I would not have the platforms. If I was running the platform, I would say, well, wait a minute, what you said is just too hateful. But that's not the government. I don't believe there should be any government restriction on that. I will say that that's another argument, though. People who are afraid of censorship by the platforms for the antitrust thing I'm talking about, which is if one company owns all the platforms, then the problem of access becomes not a constitutional issue, but a practical issue.
If
you had more platforms,
your
you'd have more
antitrust argument
diversity.
is concentration of platform. That's your test.
No, in one case, you don't want to answer.
No, I'm not.
Can I ask you this
again? To the wall here. I'm trying to figure out.
My answer is no. It depends. It can't be access because there are different business models. So you can't have one view for antitrust. My question to you is, do you think now that we have globalization of the economy, we don't need any trust anymore?
No, I would never. I would never say we don't need any.
You wouldn't say it, but you think it.
But here's what I think. I'll lay it on the table. The markets are very efficient at solving all problems if you let them.
So no antitrust law is needed.
But you don't seem to want volatility, Barney. Go back to what you did to the banks. You don't like volatility.
No, here's what I didn't like. I didn't like AIG being able to sell contracts which they had no ability to finance, so that when the day came, they went to the Federal Reserve in 2008 and said, we're $85 billion short of meeting our obligations, which the market let us incur.
So let them go bankrupt.
And then a week later, they said, oh, we forgot, we're $170 billion. Yeah, but their bankruptcy, unfortunately, because of the magnitude, had consequences for others in the system. It was not just...
You never tested that. You saved them for no reason. That's the way I look at it.
But that's, I'm trying to tell you, that's the volatility I didn't like. We have no problem with volatility as long as all we require is that the people who are taking these obligations on have the money to pay them off.
In this instance, do you think that there is actually regulation that comes forth? Is this more than just sound and fury coming from Congress right now?
You might have, because there's a coming together in the sense of the censorship, which again, it's not legal censorship, and that's why I said the more platforms you have, the less you have to worry that there is a silencing of any particular viewpoint by the private companies. And that is another argument. So I think that might bring people on the left who might just not like concentration and people on the right who want more diversity, not to allow...
If you don't think bipartisan issue?
Yeah, if you think Facebook is censoring too much, then you don't want Facebook to own all of the vehicles.
And they don't. I mean, there's so much competition.
Who said they did?
Advertising dollars right now are on Facebook for one reason. They have a very great geo-locking feature.
Right, but if you think that they are unduly censoring, I was actually asking a predictive question here. I think that you will find many on the right saying, yeah, we don't want Facebook having any more control because they're unfair to us. I'm just making the argument when I was asked do I think there's a grounds for people getting together.
An actual bipartisan issue in Congress right now.
Yeah.
When you look at Dodd-Frank now, do you think that there are things that you want to change? Are you happy with the changes that have been made to this point? We've been watching bank earnings coming out, and the banks, while they are continuing to grow, the growth has not been up to par with what it had been before regulation.
Okay, that's
that could be the Fed, too.
Yeah, no, that's... Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because people said to me, well, bank earnings are down, and you've heard me cite my mantra, Henny Youngman's, how's your wife compared to what? What are we comparing these earnings to? If you are comparing them to the earnings before 2008 and 9, then you're talking, in my judgment, about earnings that were to some extent illusory. These were not real profits.
Because of leverage, specifically?
No, because AIG was selling contracts that it turned out they were 170 billion.
Barney,
Can I answer your question? Don't ask it if you don't want an answer. The problem was that AIG was allowed under those laws to incur $170 billion of liability, which they couldn't pay off, which then caused serious reverberations. Maybe not a crisis, you say, but serious disturbances.
But you didn't let the market take care of a bad actor. They should have gone bankrupt. That's okay.
Yes, but it's not just them. It's all the people they owed money to. That's the problem. Yeah, I was perfectly happy to let them go bankrupt, and our new rule would have them go out of business. The problem we have is the innocent purchasers of these contracts.
You can't protect everybody in a capitalist society.
I'm not trying to protect everybody, but you want to protect nobody.
No, I'm just saying, look.
Well, who would you protect? Nobody.
It's wrong to pick a sector and say, oh, automotive industries were badly managed.
Would you protect any sector from the bankruptcy of those institutions? Would you have anything other than let it go and let it fall?
There is FDIC available, okay? It's there. It was already there before you put these regulations on.
For AIG, no. They had nothing to do with derivative contracts. No, your point is wrong.
No, it's not wrong.
FDIC had nothing to do with AIG.
You can't protect every mistake managers make in a capitalist society.
I'm talking about $170 billion.
That's exactly what you said. You said they were poorly managed and they lost people a lot of money. So what, I say?
So what? The so what is that enough money was lost, $170 billion, that it had disruptive effects on a lot of innocent people and had a negative effect on the economy.
$170 billion is a rounding error in our economy. I'm not sorry. It's not that much. It could have survived by just going bankrupt.
I have to say the stolid attitude in which you bear people being wiped out, all the people who had done business with AIG, the companies that were wiped out by that, I admire your calm in the face of their disaster.
No, look, I also had exposure to AIG debt. And should they have gone to zero, I would have lost that. But I had diversification, like most investors, including people with pension plans. At the end of the day, I don't like the idea the government saves failing sectors.
Okay, so let's get back to it. You don't think we need antitrust at all?
No, I didn't say that.
Yes, you did. You just didn't admit to it. That's in fact what you said.
You know, Barney, I'm just pointing out.
I asked the question again, though.
Look,
do you think there should be antitrust law?
Yes, I think there should be. You're not going to corner me on that. What I'm unhappy about is I get to meet the guy that took the earnings out of banks forever. That's who you are. That's what I say.
Well, I would say that's so silly.
No.
Because the fact is the banks are earning, and here's the point, by the way. I did not regard my job as a legislator to protect the interests of banks. I'm on a bank board now.
That's the unintended consequences of what happened.
No, but what we had was a responsibility for the economy. And the argument that what we did in any way jeopardized the economy, I think, is clearly wrong. The fact is that I don't have any particular government interest in the profit level of banks. What we want to do is to have the banks being able to provide the funds the private sector needs without potential problems. And I don't think you can argue that anything we did has interfered with the growth in the economy.